Good afternoon, Indiana. This is John Rust on the Radio, the John Rust Show, broadcasting on Freedom 95, 950 AM and 95.9 FM on your radio dial. Here in the studio today, Aiden Marietta. Welcome, Aiden.
Thank you.
Justin
Always
George.
great to be here.
Great to be here, and I'm always just in time.
And JW Mikesell.
Thank you so much. It's glad to be here.
So, folks, today we are talking about electric rates and how Indiana is becoming more and more expensive every day thanks to our establishment GOP, which has completely taken over our party and forced the Green New Deal on a red state. With great power comes great responsibility and, unfortunately, in Indiana, a huge electric bill. So this is from the Indiana Capitol Chronicle from Nikki Kelly. Hoosiers' electric bills spike 17% in 1 year. This was just published. A new analysis of Indiana's 5 investor-owned electric utilities shows bills went up 17.5% in 1 year. And folks, remember, this is not the utilities doing this. This is the Indiana GOP. Do not believe for 1 second that the utility rates are not approved by the Indiana GOP, because they control the state of Indiana lock, stock, and barrel, every single elected office statewide. And we have supermajorities in the state legislature. There's no excuse for Indiana having this massive increase in electric charges. This is from the Capitol Chronicle. Things keep getting worse for Hoosier consumers, and our state leaders continue to allow it to happen, said Kerwin Olson. This is what we're up against. The statewide average was nearly double what last year's rate was. Last year, folks, the Indiana electric rate went up 9.3%. You know, the inflation rate's what, 2.5%?
Yeah.
And electric is way higher than that in the state of Indiana. And why is that? It's because the Indiana State GOP has bought into the Green New Deal scam, hook, line, and sinker. Why on earth are we forcing our utilities to close coal-fired power plants early and force wind and solar energy on Hoosiers? However, coal is much cheaper. Why are we punishing Hoosiers by forcing coal plants to close in Indiana? It's wrong.
And, you know, speaking of inflation, even down in my small town of Versailles, Indiana, I just noticed this morning that my gas just went up 20 cents. It was $2.99, now it's $3.19.
JW, welcome to the great state of Indiana, home of the 4th highest gasoline tax in the country.
Gotta love it.
And California, by the way, I would remind our listeners, is the first in the nation. And also, our leaders are thinking about doing toll roads, about getting approval from the feds.
One way.
What Indiana needs is Indiana GOP, not forgiveness, but replacement.
Yes.
We need to elect conservatives and stop this hogwash. Tolls are a tax on working people. If you'll notice on these toll roads, folks, they always say, oh, it's a short-term solution to help pay for the bridge or the road, and it will go away over time.
False.
Never, ever, never, ever. Once the tolls get in, they never go away, because guess who the companies that collect these tolls donate to? They donate to our establishment elected career politicians. So it is just, they're feeding on themselves. And the tolls just went up on the Indiana toll road. And JW, you were talking about gasoline prices in the state of Indiana coming up. I just saw it was $3.39 at the Walmart here in Franklin, Indiana.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what happened? Guess what, folks? The Indiana state gasoline tax just went up. So if you wonder why the gasoline price is increasing again mysteriously, it's not mysterious. It is our Indiana GOP collecting more and more dollars from you.
And I was in Ohio. Ohio has a terrible governor, has a bunch of rhinos in government there, but the gas tax there is very low. Gas is cheaper in Ohio. It's cheaper to fill up in Ohio than it is in Indiana.
And it's much cheaper in Kentucky.
Yeah, much cheaper even in Kentucky with the Democrat governor. And I would just point out, you know, when I look at these gas prices here, thanks to our gas tax, it's almost like we're back to Biden-era gas prices.
The Indiana GOP is forcing what Illinois used to do. I remember this back in the day when I was driving to Iowa on I-74 across through central Indiana. There would be billboards on the side of the road, last chance for cheap gas before Illinois.
Ooh.
Because back then Indiana had low gas taxes. Now we are so high, those billboards have disappeared. Now people are having to escape Indiana to buy gasoline and cigarettes now because they have taxed cigarettes so high.
And I just want to point out that I have a lot of relatives down in like Jefferson County, close to the historic Madison, Indiana, and there's the bridge from Madison over to Milton, Kentucky. And almost everyone that I know and related to, they never go to like Madison to get gas or to get cigarettes. I always hear them
cross
talk.
the bridge.
They cross the bridge, go to Milton, and see that's driving business out of Indiana and into Kentucky. Why would we want to drive business out of the state? I mean,
And I thought the IEDC was supposed to attract business.
Well, what's happening, unfortunately, is the Indiana state gasoline tax is being used to fund the IEDC indirectly.
Yeah.
And so they're picking winners and losers that donate to the establishment political candidates. But folks in Indiana have to pay for them. And now our gasoline's getting so high, we're having to go to other states to buy it. That's ridiculous. Indiana's a red state. We should have ruby red conservative politicians here. Ruby red. There is no excuse for this blue, purple spending that the Indiana GOP is pushing on us.
Especially as compared to Kentucky.
Well, and what really fires me up on this, listen to this. Indiana just recorded a record $2.5 billion with a B $billion budget surplus, and it's because our taxes are so high and all this gas tax revenue is coming in.
And they were out there saying budget shortfall. There was no shortfall.
Right, to use as the excuse to put in the tolls. So what's happening, though, is the gas tax went up, and so people are going across the river. It's just like what you said. And that's wrong. We have to get back to having conservative values in the state of Indiana. We have to get back to conservative spending. We need to reduce government spending, not increase. And that's what, unfortunately, is happening every day. So back on these electric rates, NIPSCO, the Northern Indiana Power Company, they're the hardest. They're going up 26.7% utility increase this year for electricity. That's outrageous. CenterPoint bills are going up 25%. Duke Energy is up 20%. No. Let the coal-powered plants keep running so that we continue to have efficient, cost-effective electricity. Quit forcing wind and energy.
That's something I said. I say clean American coal all the time on here. That's the way to get it done. It's clean. It doesn't produce smoke like the left would tell you.
Well, and what's happening on this, unfortunately, you hear about all these data centers and AI. They're soaking up all this energy that Hoosiers are having to subsidize by paying for high energy costs. And the Indiana GOP, through the IEDC, is allowing all these companies to write that off on their taxes. They're not having to pay the tax on their energy use or on their plants, period. So electric bills are rising in 13 states due to data centers. So you hear a lot about these data centers. For a large swath of the United States, data centers are driving energy prices higher. Wholesale electricity prices are going up almost 22% in 2024. And like I said, here in Indiana, it's quote-unquote only 17%, but we went up 9% last year. So if you add it up, we are just going through the roof on what we have to pay for electric. Finally, some local officials are saying no to this. Vanderburgh County Commission President Justin Elpers on a proposed solar farm in northern Vanderburgh County on July 28, 2025. After listening to the concern of our residents, reviewing the potential long-term impacts, and considering the priorities of our community, I believe this particular project is not the right fit for our county. We have to change course on this. We cannot be bringing in all these data centers because all they do is soak up energy, and it just leads to higher and higher costs for you.
I just want to point out really quickly the unpopularity of solar farms. Again, back to Jefferson County, I see like yard signs everywhere that have like it's like no to solar farms, say no to solar farms.
Hoosiers don't want them. If you do the polls, no way.
Yeah,
but unfortunately, these large corporations, they do a lot of donations to the political bigwigs and to the career politicians, and that's why we get them forced on us.
And another thing I notice is that when they do all these things, most of all their development, the IDC things and all, their main target, and I'd say their only target, is Indianapolis, Marion County, and the donut counties surrounding it.
It's all tied to political donations. So listen to this. This is from Tom Nelson on Twitter. Essentially, no country with a high share of solar and wind on its grid has low electricity prices. You know, we have just lost sight of the fact that Indiana produces coal. We are blessed with an abundant supply of coal. Why on earth are we forcing Hoosiers to pay higher rates for wind and solar that has to be subsidized? This is from Chris Marks. Solar and wind are advertised as being cheaper than fossil fuels, but when added to the grid, they actually make household electricity prices skyrocket. So folks, we're out of time here on this segment, but when we come back, minimum wage in 1971 was $1.60 per hour. When we come back after the commercial break, find out how much that translates to in $2,025. This is John Rust on the Radio on Freedom 95. Welcome back, folks. This is John Rust on the Radio, the John Rust Show on Freedom 95, broadcasting at 950 AM and 95.9 FM on your radio dial all across central Indiana, our beautiful fruited plain of our beautiful state of Indiana. I love that term, fruited plain. That's what Rush Limbaugh used to say on the Rush Limbaugh Show. Gosh, I miss that show.
I miss him too. God rest his soul.
Yeah. But he would love this statistic, or not love it, he would love to talk about it and how Americans are hurting because of it. So we were talking about before the break how the minimum wage was $1.60 an hour in 1971. And that was on gold-backed dollars. So $1.60 in gold today in 2025 is $150 an hour. So folks, I know that sounds incredible, but it's the truth. You should be earning $150 per hour now if we had a gold-backed currency based on 1971 dollars. That is what Washington is taking away from us. That is what career politicians are taking away from us by this massive deficit spending. All we ask for is, would you kindly fix the roads that I've already been taxed to fix, so I'm not causing damage to the car that I already am taxed annually just to drive, which I purchased with the income that's already taxed, which sits in the driveway of my home that is also taxed. You know, everything is taxed. You know, and we're not talking about gasoline taxes, we're talking about property tax. It just keeps going up and up.
Yeah, and people might be asking, wait, is this like Massachusetts? Well, it's almost like Massachusetts, but it's happening here. Taxachusetts.
Well, Indiana is becoming Taxachusetts.
I just don't see how America can become the shining city on a hill that Reagan talked about if you have to just pay to live.
Well, what's happening is government is taking that away by government being massively expanded every year and not keeping costs in line, and by spending more than what is coming in. Pure and simple. You know, there's no such thing as a free lunch. All that a free lunch does today means you will pay more tomorrow. It means inflation, so it means every dollar you have ever saved is worth less and less. And unfortunately, you know, for instance, on home loans, for instance, we all know the company BlackRock. They get one interest home loans. You and I have to pay 7% and pay back double the home price by the end of the mortgage. And who does BlackRock fund? They fund Jim Banks and Todd Young. They fund career politicians who will do as they are told in D.C.
They are very bipartisan. Let's put it that way.
Well, it's the bipartisan uniparty.
Yes, and there's also, I would say, a disclaimer, a big difference between bipartisanship and the uniparty. And this is the uniparty.
Right. So this is from Nevada. Las Vegas residents say brand new homes are being built everywhere that are for rent only. All around the city, rental home communities are popping up. Entire subdivisions of homes that you can never own. Your kids can never own. Just rent until you die. You know, BlackRock is quietly, and not quietly, erasing home ownership. It's all part of the Great Reset plan. You know, globalist governments are quietly engineering a future where you'll never own a home because they've decided you don't deserve to. You know, and in Indiana, it's by the ridiculous property tax that keeps going up every year.
Yeah.
You know, look what the assessed values keep doing year after year, skyrocketing.
And this is the kind of vision you talked about it's globalist. Yeah, and that's the like Klaus Schwab, where he says, you will own nothing and be happy.
And he actually said that.
Klaus Schwab did, yeah.
Yeah. He said, you will own nothing and be happy.
Yeah, and lefties love that.
So does the Indiana GOP establishment. You know, the difference is between the Indiana Democratic Party and the Republican Party is the Indiana Democratic Party is insane. You know, I always say they would take 465 and make it a bike lane. The GOP will allow you
to drive a car
on it, but you're just going to have to pay a toll and a high gas tax.
I think a lot of what it boils down to is that it's not necessarily about us not being able to own anything. I think the government wants to be able to even own us.
Well, I think it's a lot of the reason why young people today believe in socialism.
Which is that's scary.
You know,
I'm a young person, and I think socialism, I've learned about it in history. It doesn't work. Look what happened in the Soviet Union. It collapsed.
And when they tore down the wall, people ran for the West. They didn't go to the East. You know, people embraced free markets. Unfortunately, today, young people don't believe in free markets because our Indiana GOP doesn't believe in free markets. You can't believe in free markets if you are picking winners and losers in our state economy.
And that's what they
That's
do
the
all
problem
time.
with the IEDC. We should be welcoming all businesses into the state of Indiana, not just the select few who happen to be contributing to your campaign coffers. Listen to this. People just don't feel like buying homes right now. It's the lowest level since 1960. Buying conditions for housing, as surveyed by consumers, reports the lowest level since 1960 for people wanting to buy homes. And they can't because the prices are so crazy.
Mm-hmm. And I know for me is like I was lucky enough that when my grandmother passed, she willed me some land that she owned. So it's to the point where when I decided to finally move out from my parents, I'm just going to build on that plot of land. I mean, the way the housing market is now, I feel like it would be a waste of money to try to buy a home.
Well, and this is from Bravo's research on Twitter. Housing defaults have just hit the highest level since 2011. You know, so buckle up, folks. The delinquency rate for multifamily housing is exponentially increasing. You know, the typical salary needed to become a homeowner in the United States is now $106,000 a year, an 80% increase from the $59,000 a year salary required in 2020. That is how rapidly the American dollar is being decimated by these career politicians in Washington. And it is not just homes, it's cars. The U.S. auto loan delinquency rate keeps on surging. This is from the Kobayashi letter on Twitter. Subprime auto loan delinquency rates just crossed above 5% for the first time in history. Since 2022, the 60-day delinquency rate for subprime auto loans has more than doubled. So the car market is being destroyed by this reckless spending in Washington. You know, people can't afford to buy the cars right now, and that's because the dollar is worth less and less, and the price keeps going up because of all this government spending. And unfortunately, job openings, they're declining rapidly. This is just from Bravo's research as well. There is a steep drop in the number of job openings. It's one of the steepest drops in recorded history right now. That's happening. You know, and people are just maxed out. Credit card debt, listen to this, folks, in 2002 was $200 billion. Today, in 2024, it is over $1.1 trillion with a T. You know, the government debt's going up. Folks are having to spend on their credit cards just to make ends meet, just to pay the bills. And it is because we have fiscal irresponsibility in Washington. You know, when I opened this segment up, we were talking about the wage, and I'm going to reiterate that because it's extremely important. The minimum wage in 1971 was $1.60 an hour. That equaled 1.82 ounces of gold on a 40-hour work week. So today that would be $150 an hour.
Wow.
I mean, when you talk about having to make six figures just to own a home, I mean, that's wild. That's just wild.
I think that's, you know, President Trump this week announced he is imposing a 25% tariff on India as a penalty for buying Russian energy and military equipment. If you want to make real progress on the American job market, stop the H-1B visa scam. Let's start paying Americans to do the good paying jobs. Let's quit importing folks from other countries.
which is happening here with these data centers. They're importing workers. They're not hiring Hoosiers.
Okay, folks, we're out of time on this segment. But when we come back, to change the subject a little bit, this is kind of funny. Recently, a study was done of the IQ levels of our elected career politicians in Washington. When we come back, we'll dig into that. Folks, this is John Rust on Rust on the Radio. We'll be right back. Welcome back, folks. This is John Rust on the Radio on Freedom 95, 950 AM and 95.9 FM on your radio dial all across central Indiana. So this is a quote from Thomas Jefferson. A wise and frugal government which shall leave men free to regulate their own pursuits of industry and improvement, and shall not take from the mouth of labor and bread it has earned. This is the sum of good government. That's what we're missing today. Well, pro is the opposite of con.
Yeah.
What is the opposite of progress? Congress. This is from the Philosophy Forum on Twitter. Congress is filled with morons, it would seem. I don't think it would seem.
I think we all know it
I think
is.
it's pretty obvious at this point.
It's very
A
obvious.
groundbreaking study has determined that 83% of members of Congress are certified morons.
That is accurate. Fact check. True.
The Kennedy School of Government did a longitudinal study over the last 30 years, and it looked at the average IQ of members of Congress, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. The study found that despite many advanced degrees from prestigious universities, and despite the fact that many in Congress are millionaires,
They're all worthless. those
the
degrees.
average IQ of a U.S. representative is at or below even the moron level.
Well, I will
not-
say there is probably only one person in there that has a high IQ, or in the
Thomas
House of
Massey.
Representatives, and that's Thomas Massey, MIT
Well,
graduate,
he's awesome.
and he's MIT graduate, but also not just that, very smart.
It's
Well-
like we laugh about that, but it's honestly depressing if you think
No,
about it. That
it's
our
depressing because you look at what these morons are doing to us. And that's fair to say that's because that's what they are. They are the ones, you're a moron if you run up a $40 trillion deficit. And that
Exactly.
is what Jim Banks, Todd Young, Aaron Houchin, the entire Indiana GOP delegation voted for, was massive new government spending. All of them. There was not one that did not vote against that.
Yeah, and then in the Senate, of course, we had one of the chief cheerleaders who was given the thumbs up at the picture for the signing was Lindsey Graham-Nesty.
Well, listen to this. In 2020, the U.S. debt was $23 trillion. Now it's going to be over $40 trillion thanks to these morons in Congress.
Yeah.
You know, never in history has the U.S. borrowed even remotely the levels we're borrowing at now. And that is why we are having these economic, not just hardships, but
Crises.
It's a crisis.
All while the debt, every 30 seconds, the U.S. debt accrues by more than $1 million. The debt clock visually
Well,
shows it.
I think it's time for a hard reset. I agree with Thomas Massey on this. He says for most of our country's history, the federal government was funded by tariffs. There was no income tax. The budget was balanced, and the federal spending was less than 10% of the GDP. Well, this is, we are so sick of the establishment GOP gaslighting us, because that's what they're doing. Remember all the promises: mass deportation, no amnesty. On the number of deportation of illegal immigrants from Indiana, at the present rate, it would take over 86 years to deport every illegal. But guess what? Unfortunately, the next Democrat president will just open up the border again.
Oh.
Well, and look at what the Indiana GOP delegation is doing, led by Erin Houchin, who's in House leadership. Look at what she is doing on the Epstein files. We are protecting child predators. That's wrong. Release the list. Release everyone who ever went to that darn island. I'll use the polite term.
and then prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And cut spending. Don't increase spending. Be a conservative. I'm so sick of them where they come to these Lincoln Day dinners and say, oh, how conservative they are. And then they go to Washington and vote the exact opposite. This is from Ronald Reagan, folks. We don't have $1 trillion debt because we haven't been taxed enough.
Exactly.
Well, this is Donald J. Trump. He said this on July 31st, 2012. No member of Congress should be eligible for re-election if our country's budget is not balanced. Deficits not allowed. Amen.
Yeah.
I think that's a genius idea. I mean,
It is.
We just wish they would follow through on it in Washington, and unfortunately the establishment GOP does not. They never do. Did you know, and this is from Daniel Horowitz, did you know that our debt is up $500 billion in less than 3 weeks? So remember, Ronald Reagan was just talking about $1 trillion national total debt. Our GOP today, because we control the House, the Senate, and the presidency, the debt went up $500 billion in 3 weeks. What Ronald Reagan's was talking about was a debt that was $1 trillion that was rang up over 220 some years. It is exponentially exploding so fast, people can't fathom what the consequences will be. And instead, what are they doing, our Congress? They're going on vacation for the month of August. John Thune is deliberately slow-walking Trump's nominations to obstruct Trump's policy agenda. This is from Sean Davis on Twitter. This is from Charlie Kirk. There are literally more than 260 federal positions appointed or nominated by President Trump that Congress has done nothing on. We're still waiting, and we are more than 6 months into this administration. And what is Congress doing? They're going on another vacation. And Thomas Massey pointed this out. During the August recess, Speaker Johnson and Leader Thune plan to call the House and Senate into session every 4 or 5 days for the sole purpose of preventing Trump from making recess appointments. Congress won't do their job, but they are coming back and doing these fake sessions, pro forma sessions, just to keep Congress in session so that he cannot do recess
Yeah,
appointments.
it's all performance art for C-SPAN.
It is exactly it.
I don't think there's been a group of people in history that have done as little work as the U.S. Congress would have taken as much of a vacation. It's like, I just got off my vacation from work last week, and I work like a dog. Now, I like doing it. I have no problem doing it. I get paid well, but 2 weeks of vacation a whole year, and you take a look at the amount of work that Congress does, almost equal to zero, and then I swear every few weeks, going on vacation. Like, what are we doing here?
Well, this is from Rob Schneider on Twitter. What the establishment GOP is doing, it's really just a giant middle finger to Republican voters.
Yeah.
Pure and simple. And who owns, the establishment GOP? It's BlackRock. Guess who BlackRock owns? They own Pfizer. They own Merck. They own AstraZeneca. They own Moderna. They own Northrop Grumman. They own Raytheon. They own MSNBC. They own CNN. They own General Dynamics.
I think you meant MSDNC, but yeah.
That's who's funding Jim Banks and Todd Young, by the way, is BlackRock. Here's from Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. She says the GOP fails its voters 100% of the time. The GOP listens to its rich donors and not its base. The GOP is 99% uniparty trash.
Yeah, I agree with her.
We have to raise the curtain right now because the American dollar has lost 10% of its value just this year.
Okay.
Listen to this, folks. This is from marketplace.org. It has been a rough few weeks for the greenback. The U.S. dollar, generally thought of as a safe haven in times of economic and geopolitical turmoil, has crashed 10% this year, and it keeps going down.
Yeah.
This is the worst start to the year for the dollar since 1973, the year that Nixon took the United States off the gold standard. And this is from marketplace.org. It does feel like a turning point, and now the dollar is probably now in a downward trend on a multi-year horizon. So, folks, we're out of time on this segment, but when we come back, there is sadly more and more corruption being exposed in Indiana's 9th GOP district. Guess who is behind a recent campaign flyer pushing Aaron Hounchin? When we come back, we'll get right back into this. This is John Rust on the Radio. Welcome back, folks. This is John Rust on the Radio, broadcasting on Freedom 95, 950 AM and 95.9 FM on your radio dial, broadcasting all across the beautiful fruited plain of our beautiful state of Indiana. So this is the quote of the week from Governor Mitch Daniels, speaking of Lake County at Griffith, Indiana. This is from Governor Daniels. You are entitled to all the lousy, crummy, graft-ridden government you want and are willing to pay for. Folks, guess what? Indiana 9th District GOP chairman is in the news again. Jamie Knoll, our former Indiana 9th District GOP chairman, his former EMS organization called New Chapel in Jeffersonville just announced they are filing for bankruptcy.
Lovely.
This is from Jay Skeba on WHAS 11 News. Jeffersonville, Indiana, the nonprofit EMS organization formerly owned and operated by Jamie Knoll, is broke. The Utica Township Volunteer Firefighters Association, known as New Chapel EMS, and currently operating as Phoenix Ambulance, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection last Wednesday. Remember, in January of 2024, after his arrest, Jamie Knoll pleaded guilty to numerous felonies, including over 15 counts of theft, 4 counts of tax evasion, and 1 count of money laundering. Knoll admitted to spending over $3 million on himself, his family, and friends using New Chapel credit cards. He is serving a 12-year prison sentence. And if you all remember, folks, Jamie Knoll is the one who not only was he the 9th District Indiana GOP chairman,
Former sheriff of Clark County as well.
he was also Jim Banks' biggest fan.
I was just about to say that because I have a little bit of something here where it's still on his Instagram page, the Team Banks Instagram page, from 2023. Clark County Sheriff and 9th District GOP Chairman Jamie Knoll endorses Jim Banks for Senate. And to add insult to injury, it is still up there, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot make this stuff up. And he also had ties to Governor Holcomb, this Knoll character as well, and plenty of other establishment politicians.
Well, that tells you everything you need to know about Jim Banks right there.
Absolutely.
That he is still
everything.
bragging about that guy who's sitting in jail today.
Yeah, Holcomb pretty much
Supporting
just
him.
pretended he didn't know what was going on, even though I'm sure he did. But I won't speak to that. But Jim Banks is still out there with that endorsement.
Well, the story's not just what Jamie Knoll did behind the scenes.
Totally wrong. Disgusting.
But the story really is $3 million was stolen from the taxpayers of Southern Indiana.
Exactly.
And everyone's being quiet, like, oh, yeah, it's fine. I understand Todd Rokita, our Attorney General, has went after some of that to try to get it back. I don't know where we're at on that.
I don't know, but if he gets that back, I have to
But
say,
we-
I hope he does.
Well, we have to get back every penny.
But no, like you say, this should be like one of the top stories. I mean, a former sheriff, doing this to the citizens of Indiana. I mean, everybody should be up in arms about this.
And it's not just in Clark County. Just recently, the Du Bois County Sheriff, as you know, former Superintendent Carter, came out very bravely because he spearheaded against Knoll. And after he left, this particular Du Bois County Sheriff had an investigation against him for, I think, roughly the same thing, had it dismissed. It was on the Kendall and Casey's show recently. It's very troubling.
That is a developing story, folks, and we're going to be getting into that in future episodes.
Right. I don't want to speak too much because I know it's still
because
developing.
this is a massive story coming forward that Rob Kendall and
Superintendent Carter came out with that.
on WIBC. So kudos to them for breaking this story. So this is from U.S. Term Limits. Thank you, Representative Houchin, for co-sponsoring a bill to implement term limits. I say hogwash. Career politicians, do it. Don't just talk about it.
Lead by example.
So she is on her second term now, and she's running for her third, apparently.
From what we can tell, she might be.
Well, guess who is pushing her?
I'm almost afraid to ask.
There's a flyer being mailed out all across the 9th District of Southern Indiana, and it is paid for by the American Prosperity Alliance. And if you saw this flyer on first blush, if you saw it, yeah, it sounds great. Keeping America the global leader in medical innovation, safeguarding American jobs, protecting taxpayers, rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid. Well, the problem is she's done none of that.
No,
She
she
has
hasn't.
worked to stop all of that. No, we are facing a crisis in this country. So this group, American Prosperity Alliance, guess who's behind that? It's a shadowy group, but this is from Politico. It is a McCarthy-aligned group. running ads against Republicans who triggered his speaker ousters. So this group, who is tied to McCarthy, according to Politico, is backing Aaron Houchin. That says everything you need to know about our establishment GOP here in the state of Indiana. If you have Kevin McCarthy supporting you, you're not a conservative. You're an establishment GOP hack, period.
Yeah.
You know, it's Tweedledum and Tweedledee. It's the uniparty. There is no difference. You know, it's why we get Aaron Houchin, who votes continuously for massive new government debt. Repeatedly, over the last several years, she has voted for trillions of dollars of new government debt. Well, what offends me on this is where they're talking about medical costs. Medical costs have went through the roof just in the last few years. Listen to this. This is from Wall Street Apes, talking about this person here on Twitter. It says, just got my first hospital bill after my first time staying in the hospital. This is extortion. This is why everyone hates our medical system. He says he had high blood pressure, was in the ER for less than 2 hours, no surgery, no CAT scan, no MRI. This was his bill. $17,000 in lab work for standard blood panels, $11,000 for an ER visit that lasted maybe 2 hours, and $800 for physical therapy, occupational therapy visits, where the therapist just walked in, looked at me and said, "You're fine," and left. And $4,400 for a blood culture. Altogether, total almost $42,000. And his out-of-pocket expenses was $4,400. So the bill was still over $40,000. Like, this is insane. This is extortion. That's our medical system today, folks. Listen to this. The average U.S. family health insurance premium in 2000 was $6,000 a year. Guess what it is today? $26,000. It's went up $20,000 just in the last 24 years. We have to bring back free markets. We have to bring back free market capitalism to everything, including healthcare.
Yeah.
For that.
All it means is you end up paying more when the government is involved. It's just like the post office. Remember, a first-class stamp in 1952 was 3 cents. If you adjust that for inflation, it should be 36 cents today. Instead, it's 78 cents. And that's the same thing that's happening in healthcare. There are no more doctors today than there were 20 years ago, really. But guess how many more health administrators there are? It has exponentially increased. We're not doing healthcare. We're doing healthcare management, where we're paying this giant bureaucracy that feeds these trial lawyers, you know, trillions and billions of dollars. It's just like the gasoline tax, the tolls. Everything the establishment GOP touches gets more expensive.
Yep.
It
Pure and
affects all
simple.
of us. It affects all of us.
We have to elect true conservatives. We have to get away from these rhinos. There are no true conservatives. That's what we need, is true economic conservatives. You know,
Exactly.
that's what I am. I'm an economic conservative. I'm a Margaret Thatcher conservative. Pure and simple. So this is just in, folks. Unfortunately, the House Republican Appropriations has restored full funding to the National Endowment of Democracy. Trump requested $0, not a penny, and the House GOP just gave them $315 million back. Remember what we were talking about where USAID and NED was being cut?
Yep.
The National Endowment for Democracy. The GOP Congress is putting it right back in the next bill. It is all for show.
There you go.
It's a
Just like the
documentary
NPR PBS thing, Jim Banks says he's going to defund it. He doesn't defund it. It's all for show because he knows it's never going to happen.
It's all hogwash. You know, and the Congress woman who did this was
Elise Stefanik, she is a big-time rhino, big-time establishment
All-time.
person.
Well,
She's
she
the
served
all-time
as a
winner.
board member of this NED from January 30th, 2019 to January of 2025.
That
This is
doesn't
why I don't
surprise
think
me.
members of Congress or their families should be on any organization that receives government funding. Pure and simple.
Yeah.
Guess what her Liberty score was?
It is an F.
Of course.
She's one of the
48%.
most liberal Republicans in the House of Representatives, and some people are saying that she's so conservative that she should run for governor of New York. How about no? No.
I saw a meme on Twitter. It was like, if we had 50 governors like Ron DeSantis, we
Yes.
wouldn't even need Congress.
There you go.
Yes, that.
Well, you know, folks, this has been quite a show. We have covered quite a bit on how Hoosiers are facing exorbitant increases in the cost of electricity, how our economy is struggling with the housing market showing terrible indicators, how job openings are being slashed, credit card balances going through the roof, all due to Washington's exorbitant deficit spending, and how career politicians have destroyed the Indiana Republican Party, which is not a conservative party at all. But by shining the light, hopefully we can get new leaders to run for office, both here in Indiana and in Washington, D.C. I can't emphasize enough, if someone runs for office, irregardless, don't vote for their reelection. You know, look at our Indiana GOP Secretary of State, our entire Indiana GOP House and Senate delegation voting for massive new government debt that is destroying our economy. But there is hope. There is always tomorrow. So that's why I always like closing with my father's favorite Bible verse, Psalm 118, verse 24. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Folks, thank you so much for listening. Thank you all so much for being here today, and we will see you all again next week on the radio.